What if I told you this camera right here can record HDR RAW video in Dual ISO for less than $200? And if you load some free software onto it, that the results would totally change the way you think about owning and buying cameras forever. But first, if you're new here, hi, I'm a cinematographer based in France, and this channel is for camera lovers. For the regulars, hello again, friend. It is great to see you again. And as always, if I forget something important, please drop it in a comment below. Let's start by exploring the history of the Canon 5D Mark II because it really did change the game. On release, it had some amazing specs like a full-frame sensor, full HD 24p in what was then the smallest video camera package you could buy. And you have to remember, this camera predates the Pocket OG by 5 years. So it really caught people's attention, including Hollywood's. Plus, a lot of movies actually used the Mark II, notably Iron Man, where it was used selectively, but Act of Valor was almost entirely shot using the system. Even House jumped in on the act, a popular TV show at the time, which filmed a full episode with one. And even though the DP used the 5D Mark II without the tools we're going to discuss today, that episode of House was the best looking episode in the series by far. Even I shot features with the 5D Mark II back in the day. But even I wish back then that this camera had shipped with a dual ISO HDR mode, focus peaking, waveforms, zebras, controllable bit rates, let alone the ability to record RAW. So how is it possible that we can do this today? Well, there's a community of developers that created a software called Magic Lantern, which can be side-loaded onto your camera. This firmware unlocks features Canon doesn't want us to have, and that needs celebration because the Magic Lantern team have been able to reverse engineer the camera so that we can exploit its full potential, the potential Canon doesn't want us to know exists in their older cameras, and highlights how restricted some of their modern cameras truly are. So if getting more from your camera sounds appealing to you, getting started with Magic Lantern is very simple. All we need to do is head over to the Magic Lantern website and download the software that's right for your camera, because it covers a bunch of different cameras. Apart from that, to be able to play back and convert the footage, you also need to download the MLV software, which we'll get into in a minute. Once you have the software loaded onto your camera, hitting the trash button will open the menus. It can be overwhelming at first because there is an absolute mountain of options to choose from compared to the standard 5D menu. We don't have all day here, so I'm just going to share with you some of my favorites. So let's start by exploring the RAW video first because it's vastly different from Arri's, Red's, Canon's, and Blackmagic's RAW. Magic Lantern RAW can't just be dropped into your NLE of choice. It has to be decoded first. And that's because Blackmagic Design, Adobe, and Apple NLEs don't recognize it. Years ago, this is the sole reason why I stopped using Magic Lantern. The footage was so difficult to process, and it would always get flagged by producers as a time-wasting, money-sucking department expense. Now, in comparison to what I remember, the MLV player makes the transcoding process much simpler today. Now you can export footage to whatever you want, like ProRes, or even adopt a more widely acceptable RAW format like Cinema DNG, which will open with full RAW control in Resolve. Now, here's a few examples filmed with the Canon 5D Mark II in RAW. But RAW video isn't the only advantage that Magic Lantern unlocks in your 5D Mark II. You can also record in HDR mode, and it's actually really cool. In this mode, half of your frames are overexposed and the other half are underexposed. Then when combined in software, you end up with a really high dynamic range video file. You just have to remember, if your desired end frame rate is 24p, you have to record in 48 frames per second. 24 frames overexposed, 24 frames underexposed, and when they come together, that's how you get the perfect HDR look. But if you don't want to mess around with frame rates, there's another mode called Dual ISO. This mode works similar to what a Canon C70's dual gain sensor does, where it merges over and underexposed frames together while recording. You will still need the MLV software to process it, but the end result is higher dynamic range images with less noise. However, I've had a lot of issues trying to get it to work. But as far as I'm concerned though, this is part of the fun or the challenge of hacking cameras. Look, Magic Lantern is far from perfect, and currently I'm experiencing a lot of glitches. Glitches like the first frame in the recording gets repeated over and over and over. I've got frame tearing, crazy pink noise, audio blast, the camera jamming, settings not registering, the dual ISO not deactivating, it just keeps running even when you reboot the camera, and that's just to name a few. But because there is a strong, proactive community who are engaged and constantly updating things, I'm sure all of the bugs...
Magic Lantern having a complete sad...
The bugs that I'm experiencing will soon get sorted out. We just have to wait and see. These developers are pretty talented after all, and they've even been able to get 5.6K recording modes into the mix. The caveat is that it'll only record 3.8 frames per second. Now, I'm a DP, not a technical genius, so I wonder what the real bottleneck is. Could it just be a card limitation? And if so, why doesn't someone just produce an updated card? I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would buy it. Anyway, in the future, I hope this is something that I can crack into a more stable build, because for sub $200, for anyone who loves tinkering with cameras, Magic Lantern opens up a lot of doors for you to have fun with or enhance your filmmaking on a budget. What would be cool is if some of you could share your best settings list below, because at the moment, my hit rate is about 1 in 40 clips and the rest are just corrupted. So by sharing the settings you use for sustained long duration RAW recordings, that could really help people like me, who read all of the comments, to understand how the recording settings affect each other, or just provide a shortcut and remove some of the frustration of using the hack. Because yeah, I'm finding some of it pretty frustrating. And as I've come back to Magic Lantern after a long hiatus, there's a couple of things that I would like to see added. The first is, I've never understood why Magic Lantern's user interface is so badly designed. It's poorly laid out and unintuitive, and why there are items with names that literally make no sense in either photographic or cinematographic terms. Like when I think about it, and I look back now on the 5D Mark II and the features that Magic Lantern provides today, really makes me feel like Canon severely hamstrung this game-changing camera back in 2008. But even today, when I compare the camera running 2 different menu systems, Canon's wins hands down on reliability and user experience, with Magic Lantern just taking the cake only on image quality. If the team at Magic Lantern could build a better bridge between the two and fix some reliability issues, it would probably attract a larger user base, which would in turn bring more people back to using old cameras, which is my endgame.